Hello and welcome once again to the hard Brexit scenario on Football Manager 2020, where the UK has left UEFA, left to fend for itself, create its own Champions League, create its own new league system, and stuff like that. And today, on episode 30, we've reached 30 already. We're in the we're at the end of the fourth season, and we're going to see who has won all the cups. After we found out who won all the leagues on the last edition, it's time to find out who won all the cups, who's going to be in the Cup Winners' Cup next season, who has won the FA Cup, who has won the Champions League, both UEFA and Brexit. So let's find out. We'll start in order as per usual. We'll head over to Anguilla and find out who won the Anguillan Knockout Cup. It was Diamond. They beat Uprising 2-1 at the AFA National Stadium in the Valley to win it for the first time since the second time since we started taking the crown from Ballers. Also, there's the AFA President's Cup, which is their charity shield. That was won by Ballers, beating Roaring Lions in the final 3-2. Well, I say in the final, there's only one round, but beating them 3-2 on aggregate. Also in the Caribbean, there is Bermuda, and we've got 3 competitions to go through here. First, their version of the FA Cup, the Bermudan FA Challenge Cup, which saw PHC Zebras do the double as they beat Robin Hood 3-2 in the final at the National Sports Centre Stadium in Hamilton. We also had the Bermudan Dudley Eve Trophy, which is just for top division teams, and PHC Zebras won that one as well to do the treble, beating North Village Rams in the final 2-0. Plus, we had the Bermudan Friendship Trophy, which is for the teams outside of the top division. MVCC Rams won that 3-0 in the final, beating YMSC Bluebirds at the PHC Zebras Stadium in Hog Bay. So that's Bermuda. How about the British Virgin Islands, and who won their President's Cup? It was won by Panthers, who beat Islanders 2-0 in the final to win that one. Is it their first one? No, it's their second. I keep getting that one wrong. But it is, two since we started for them. In the Cayman Islands, in the CIFA Cup, it was won by the Elite, who beat Future 3-0 at Truman Bodden in Georgetown. So well done to the Elite. I know that's not their first time. Pretty sure I've heard their name a few times. In Gibraltar, in the Gib Telecom Rock Cup, I believe for the third time in 4 years, Europa FC have done it, beating what I'm assuming is their neighbours, Europa Point, 1-0 in the final. I say their neighbours, they all play at the same stadium, I believe. And so it's 3 times since we began this scenario that Europa FC have won that competition. In the Pepe Reyes Cup, which is their charity shield, Europa FC won that one as well, 2-0, beating Mons Kelp. And that is Gibraltar. What about Montserrat? No, there's only one competition in Montserrat, and we covered that on the last edition. So let's skip to the Turks and Caicos Islands. The President's Cup over there was won by Cheshire Hall, but to be fair, they only had to play the semi-finals before that because there's only 7 teams, meaning one team gets a bye to the semi-finals, so they had an easy route. They beat Full Physic in the final 2-0 to win it once again. They'll be in the Cup Winners' Cup next season. In the British territories, we'll skip back a couple of rounds for this one. Spoiler alert there, you can see who's won it when I get to the actual correct screen. We'll go back to the quarterfinals and take a rough idea of which of the leagues was getting the most teams in there. Jersey had 3 teams in the quarterfinals, so they were probably one of the favourites. 2 from the Pitcairn Islands, which was quite surprising, plus 1 from the Isle of Man, South Georgia, and St Helena, that's the one. So Roselle Rovers, Leith Harbour, Douglas HSOB and St Clement made it through. We had an all Jersey no, we didn't. We could have had an all Jersey final. St Clement beating Leith Harbour, and Douglas HSOB beating the other Jersey team, Roselle Rovers, to make it to the final. And then in the final, it was Douglas HSOB beating St Clement 2-0 to win their first British Territories Challenge Cup at the Springfield Stadium in Jersey. Right, so we're done with those ones. Now, for the mainland, Northern Ireland. And how has the Irish Cup done? Or who has won the Irish Cup, to be more precise? and it was last season's finalist Dungannon that actually won it. But let's go back to the quarterfinals just to see how it went down, with Dergview beating Coleraine in the quarterfinals after a 2-2 draw on penalties. Portadown also went to penalties against Larne. We had Dungannon Swifts beating Immaculata 2-1, and Newry City beat Crusaders 2-0. So no Antrim teams and no Belfast teams in the semi-finals. And in those semi-finals, we had Portadown beating Newry City 3-2, and Dungannon Swifts beating Dergview in a all County Tyrone an all County Tyrone semi-final there. And in the final, Dungannon Swifts beat Portadown 3-0 to win the cup for the first time. They were runners-up last season, so well done to Dungannon. In the League Cups, Belfast League Cup, Linfield beat Glentoran 2-0 to win that one. County Antrim, Larne were 2-0 winners over Carrick Rangers. We had County Armagh, Glenavon were winners there, beating Loughall 3-1. Newry City won the County Down League Cup as they beat Banbridge 2-1 in their final. County Fermanagh, and it's Ballina Malad United winning it once more. They beat Enniskillen Galaxy 2-0 in the final. And County Londonderry, Coleraine beat Institute 2-1. Battle of the top two there in the final, with Coleraine coming out on top. Finally, County Tyrone, Dungannon Swifts, they did the treble. They won the League Cup and the League Cup, beating Cookstown New 3-1 in the final to make it a very successful season for them. On to the Welsh Cups, to be more precise. And we'll start with the Welsh Cup. I believe we were at the semi-final stage last time we checked, but I'm going to go back to the quarterfinals, just to be fair. So we had Waterloo Rovers beating Borth, Swansea beat Merthyr Town, Cardiff beat Newport County, and Airbus UK beat Swansea Dockers after extra time. But in the semi-finals, we had Swansea versus Cardiff. They were against each other, so one of them had to drop, and that was Cardiff City, the reigning champions. They got beat by Swansea 1-0 at the Millennium Stadium. So a nice day at a big stadium for both teams. Meanwhile, Airbus UK beat Waterloo Rovers on penalties at the Pentraeth Stadium in Anglesey after a 2-2 draw to make the final themselves. It was a foregone conclusion in the final, though, Swansea beating Airbus UK 2-0 to win the cup for the second time since the scenario started. But I won't take too much of a look at that because I've got a plan for future episodes to take a look at that. In the Clwyd League Cup, Rill won that one, beating Sefton Druids on penalties after a 1-1 draw. I believe that's their first competition. I think it's the first time anyone other than Wrexham's won this one, so that's nice. In Dyfed, it's former league champions Pennincock beating Abereren 2-1 in the final to take that one. Newport County obviously won the Gwent League Cup, beating Machen 2-0 in the final there at Newport Stadium, Newport. That's not the same one, is it? Which team? Quite a few teams actually playing there. I think it's Newport City is the actual home team. So kind of a home game for Newport County, but not actually because it wasn't at Rodney Parade. In Gwynedd, Bangor City champions there once more after a 2-2 draw with Carnarvon. They did it on penalties. While in Mid Glamorgan, Merthyr Town surprisingly did not win. They've won the league 4 years in a row, but they couldn't beat Kirrao in the final. 2-1 the final score at the Brewery Field in Bridgend to give Kirrao their first Mid Glamorgan League Cup. In Powys, Clanreda beat Clanfair 2-1 to win that one. South Glamorgan, the two obvious ones coming up. Cardiff beat Barry 4-0 at the Millennium Stadium to win the South Glamorgan League Cup. While in West Glamorgan, Swansea beat Afan Lido 2-0 at the Cardiff City Stadium to take that one. Scotland, and we will go to their League Cups and the FA Cup. This is one you probably weren't expecting, but as we know, we'll go back to the quarterfinals, even though we already knew what happened. Celtic and Rangers both went out in the quarterfinals, losing to Ross County and St Mirren respectively. We also had Peterhead making it through, beating Dunfermline after extra time, on penalties to be exact, after a 1-1 draw after extra time, and Kilmarnock, they did do it in extra time against Partick Thistle. In the semi-finals, Peterhead beat Ross County 3-1, so last year's finalists were defeated at the Inverness Athletic Stadium. 3-1 the final score, while in the other one, St Mirren beat the reigning champions, Kilmarnock, on penalties after a 1-1 draw at Ibrox. So the final was not the two teams from last year's final like we were expecting, possibly. Instead, we had two different teams. And it was St Mirren that beat Peterhead in the final, 1-0, at Hampden Park to do it. So well done to St Mirren. They've won the cup for the first time since we started the scenario, and they'll be playing in the Cup Winners' Cup next season. Angus, Dundee got a measure of revenge after Dundee United pipped them to the league title. They beat them on penalties after a 2-2 draw to win the Angus League Cup. In the Ayrshire League Cup, Kilmarnock were champions there, beat Ayr 3-1. While in Central Scotland, Alloa Athletic couldn't do it, Falkirk beating them 1-0 in the final. Dumfries and Galloway League Cup, Queen of South won that one. 2-0 they beat Dalbeattie Star in the final at the Lockhart Thistle Stadium in Dumfries. Dunfermline Athletic beat Raith 3-1 to win the Fife League Cup. While in Glasgow, it was Rangers' time to shine. They beat Celtic 1-0 at Hampden Park to win that one. Skip Grampian there. Who did Aberdeen beat in the final? There we go. Aberdeen won the Grampian League Cup, beating Fraserburgh in the final 3-0 at Ibrox. A bit of a distance to travel there for considering where all the other ones are, but still a nice big stadium for a big win. In Highlands and Islands, Inverness Caledonian Thistle were the cup winners there. They beat Brora Rangers 1-0. While in Lanarkshire, Hamilton Academical won the cup 3-0, beating East Kilbride at the Hairstains Stadium in Kirkintilloch. That was Hamilton's first Lanarkshire League Cup win, as Motherwell have won it for the other 3 seasons. In Lothian, an Edinburgh derby in the final at Murrayfield, and Hibernian came out on top, beating Harder Midlothian 2-1. In Perthshire, this one was an obvious one, with St Johnstone beating Kinhall 2-1 to win the cup. Renfrewshire, St Mirren 3-0 winners over Greenock Morton. They've done the treble this season of the Renfrewshire League Cup and the FA Cup. So a good day at Rugby Park for them after a 3-0 win over Morton. Scottish Borders and Vale of Leven got a measure of revenge over Gala Ferrydean Rovers. They may have won the league, but they lost in the cup. Vale of Leven winning it on penalties after a 2-2 draw. Finally in Scotland, the Tonics Caramel Wafer Challenge Cup. Arniston won it 2-1, beating White Hills in the final at Hampden Park, so well done to them. They don't get anything, maybe a bit of money, but still, it's nice. Over to England, and we shall see what happened in the FA Cup. We'll drift back to the quarterfinals like we did with the other ones. And spoiler alert for the final. So in the quarterfinals, I believe we knew what happened anyway, but Bristol City beat Reading, Leicester beat Bolton, Man United beat Fulham, and Man City beat Norwich. So the reigning champions were in the semi-finals, but they went out. They lost to Manchester United 2-1 at Anfield, while Leicester beat Bristol City, and it doesn't say what the stadium is. Can we find out what the stadium is? I'm going to find out what the stadium is. Semi-final. It was at Wembley. There we go. So a nice day at the office for Leicester. They got to the final where they would play Manchester United, but unfortunately it was not to be for Leicester. Man U beating them 3-0 in the final, also at Wembley there, obviously, giving Man U their first FA Cup success of this scenario, and they'll be in the Cup Winners' Cup next season. Over to the English League Cups, Bedfordshire, Luton won it 2-0, beating Barton Rovers in the final at Stadium NK, while in Berkshire, another straightforward one for Reading, 3-0, they beat Hungerford in the final. Bristol and Gloucestershire League Cup, Cirencester, the surprise winners of that one. They were victorious 1-0 over Bristol Rovers at the Cassam Stadium in Oxford. First time winners for Cirencester, well done to them. Buckinghamshire, no such shock there. Wycombe Wanderers defeating Beaconsfield 3-0 at the Den in London. Cambridgeshire, Peterborough North Star, runners-up in 2 competitions this season. They beat Cambridgeshire to that Empire League spot in the league, but they couldn't do it in the cup, losing in the final 1-0. But still a great performance for them this season. In Cheshire, Macclesfield were League Cup winners there. They beat Chester 2-1 in the final after extra time. While in Cornwall, it was a 2-1 win for Truro City against league runners-up Godolphin at Poltaire Park in St Austell. Cumbria, Carlisle did the double this season of League and League Cup. They beat Penrith 1-0 to lift that one. While in Derbyshire, another surprising one, Derby County beaten in the Derbyshire League Cup final by Alfreton Town. 2-1 the final score after extra time at the City Ground in Nottingham. So another well done to them. First time they've won at the Derbyshire League Cup, I believe. In Devon, Plymouth, the league winners, did a League and Cup double, beating Torquay 2-0 in the final, while in Dorset, an easy one for Bournemouth, they beat Shaftesbury 3-0 in the final to lift that League Cup. Durham, Hartlepool United 2, Darlington 0 at the Riverside Stadium in Middlesbrough in the cup final there, while in Essex, Chelmsford City did it. They beat Colchester United 1-0 at Roots Hall to lift, I believe that was their second one. 2 years in a row for Chelmsford, so force to be reckoned with possibly in the future. You never know. Grey London, one of the interesting ones. We'll take a few steps back in this one, back to the quarterfinal. Actually, we were at the semi-final last time we checked. So Chelsea beat Palace 4-0. Tottenham beat Dagenham and Redbridge 3-0 to make the final. And then in the final, 3-1 the final score. Chelsea beat Tottenham 3-1 at the Emirates Stadium in London. Greater Manchester, and we had the noisy neighbours against each other. Man City beating Man United 3-0 in the final. Also at Anfield, they did the FA Cup semi-final there too, so the two teams might be getting used to it. But this time it was City coming out on top and City winning the tournament. Hampshire and the Isle of Wight League Cup. Southampton won that one. 1-0 against Portsmouth at the London Stadium. A lovely day out for the two teams there. Hertfordshire League Cup, Watford expected winners, 2-0 the final score against Stevenage there, also at the London Stadium. Two finals being played there. In Kent, no Gillingham, no Dover. A new team winning it this season. Maidstone United beating Tonbridge Angels 2-0 at the Brentford Community Stadium. Lancashire 3-0 to Burnley against Morecambe in the final there. And in Leicestershire and Rutland, Leicester won the League Cup 2-1 against Melton in the final. Lincolnshire, no Lincoln City, no Grimsby. It was Scunthorpe's turn to win the trophy. They beat Grantham 2-0 at Sincil in Lincoln to take the honours. While in Merseyside, no Liverpool this season. Instead, Everton are the ones winning the League Cup, getting some sort of revenge after losing the league title this season to Liverpool. The final score 2-0 against Tranmere. Norfolk, Norwich City won it again. 2-0 they beat Galston. While in Northamptonshire, it was a Northampton win. They beat Corby Town 2-1 at the Ricoh Arena in Coventry. Nottinghamshire and Nottingham Forest miss out on the trophy this season. They lost to Notts County on penalties after a 1-1 draw. While in Oxfordshire, Oxford City did it they didn't. Oxford United did it 2-1 against Oxford City at the Meadowski in Reading. Shropshire League Cup, and Shrewsbury expectedly won that one. They beat Market Drayton in the final 3-0. While in Somerset, Yeovil, despite making the final, missed out, losing on penalties to Frome at Dean Court in Bournemouth. Well done to Frome. Another surprise winner of the League Cup this season. We're getting a few of them. It's good to see. Staffordshire, Stoke, no surprises there. They beat Tamworth 3-1 at Villa Park. While in the Suffolk League Cup final, Ipswich did that one 3-0. They didn't, not like last season where they missed out on even making the final. They beat AFC Sudbury 3-0 to win it. Surrey, Woking won the League Cup, beating Leatherhead 2-1. And in Sussex, another expected one, Brighton beat Worthing 2-0 at Wembley. A nice day at Wembley for Worthing. Tyne & Wear and Newcastle did that one 2-1 in the final. They beat Hebburn after extra time at the Stadium of Light. While in Warwickshire, it was Leamington's turn to do it, and they did it on penalties at the Hawthorns against Stratford. One day, maybe someone else will play in the final of this competition, but for now, Leamington are the ones sharing the spoils. In the West Midlands, West Bromwich Albion 1-0 winners against Aston Villa at Old Trafford to take that one. While in Wiltshire, Salisbury have done it. They beat Royal Wootton Bassett 2-0 to take the Wiltshire League Cup. Possibly one of the more open League Cups, it seems, from recent seasons. Swindon have only won it in the first season, and Swindon Supermarine won it for the past two, so someone else winning it. In Worcestershire, Kidderminster, they're not letting go of their reign of that competition, beating Alvechurch 2-0 at the Team Dudley Stadium. And finally, Yorkshire, in their League Cup, Leeds United won it 3-2 against Sheffield United to do the League and League Cup double, beating Sheffield United at their arch-rivals' ground in Hillsborough. So 3-2 final score. In the Leasing.com trophy, the one for teams outside the top division plus a couple of the other ones. We'll go to the quarterfinals there. We can see that Barnet of the London Championship beat Berwick, who are a top tier team. They're one of the Northumberland ones who don't have their own League Cup. And the other teams there, another team from Northumberland, Blythe, they lost to Stalybridge Celtic. Welling United beat Carshalton in a Greater London derby on penalties, and the other Greater London team, Hayes and Yedding, they missed out, losing to Northumbrian team Morpeth on penalties. Then in the semi-finals, the only top tier team left, Morpeth, were beaten on penalties by Barnet, who will be in the top tier next season, but the Dronfield Stadium in Dronfield saw a top tier team get beaten. Meanwhile at Lutterworth, Welling United beat Stalybridge Celtic on penalties, meaning the final of the Leasing.com trophy for the first time saw some lower division teams. Normally it's between teams from Northumbria and Herefordshire, but instead we have two Greater London Championship teams in it, and this time Barnet won 2-1 against Welling, meaning for the first time a team from London has won the Leasing.com trophy since we changed it in this scenario. So we've gone through all the domestic cups now. Let's have a look at the European Champions League and then their lower ones. We'll start in the second round because that's where we were last time we checked. So Bayern Munich beat Atletico Madrid, Valencia beat Hapoel Beersheva, PSG knocked out Real Madrid on away goals, Barcelona beat Benfica, Inter Milan demolished Doxa Katakopias, while Lyon eliminated Bayer Leverkusen, Juventus beat Krasnodar, and Hertha Berlin beat Panathinaikos. While in the quarterfinals we had PSG beating Valencia on away goals, another away goals win against the Spanish team for PSG. We had Bayern Munich beating Inter Milan, Juventus beat Lyon, and Barcelona beating Hertha Berlin, meaning we had some proper heavyweights in the semi-final stage. Juventus v Barcelona, it went to Juventus on away goals, while Bayern Munich played PSG, and Bayern Munich did that one on penalties, giving us Juventus versus Bayern Munich in the final. And as you can see, at the Rheinpark Stadion in Vaduz, so it went to Liechtenstein, Bayern Munich beat Juventus 1-0 to become the reigning European Champions Cup winners, and both of these teams will be in the Club World Cup come December. In the Euro Cup, or Europa League, in the second round, we saw Getafe beat Marseille, Galatasaray beat Spartak Moscow, Hoffenheim beat Lazio, AC Milan beat Napoli, Zenit St. Petersburg beat Young Boys, Hajduk Split beat PAOK, Athletic Bilbao beat Eibar, and Rennes beat Sporting. Moving into the quarterfinals, Galatasaray eliminated Rennes, Athletic Bilbao beat Hoffenheim, Zenit were eliminated by AC Milan, and Getafe threw out Hajduk Split. And in the semi-finals, we can see that Bilbao beat Galatasaray and AC Milan beat Getafe. So we had last season's reigning champions AC Milan against Athletic Bilbao in the final, and they did it. They did it 2 in a row. AC Milan 1-0, the final score at the Estadio Jose Alvalade Seculo, the 21st in Lisbon. No, that was 2 in a row for them. Yes, 2 in a row for AC Milan. Maybe in this game they're back to their old selves. But not so much because they haven't actually been in the Champions League yet, so maybe not so much. In the Euro Cup, we'll go to the second round there. Arsenal Tula beat Trnava, Deportivo La Coruña beat Zelneznica, Slavia Prague beat Universitatea Craiova, while Torino eliminated Jagiellonia. Utrecht beat Trabzonspor, Alexandria beat Seroki Brugge, Werder Bremen beat Austria Vienna, and Vitoria Guimarães beat Olympiacos. So in the quarterfinals, we saw Deportivo La Coruña beat Torino, Utrecht eliminated Alexandria, Werder Bremen defeated Vitoria Guimarães, and Slavia Prague went through against Arsenal Tula. In the semi-finals, Deportivo La Coruña convincingly beats Utrecht, and Werder Bremen beat Slavia Prague to give us a decent looking final of Deportivo La Coruña versus Werder Bremen at the Narodowy in Warsaw, and 2-1 the final score to Deportivo La Coruña. They are the Europa Conference League champions. On to the Brexit Champions League. Well, we'll have a look at the Empire League first, actually, and see how that one went. Spoiler alert there. We'll go to the quarterfinals. I believe that's where we were last time. So, as expected, Man U beat Sunderland. Liverpool beat Carlisle. The only one between two teams where you weren't quite sure who was going through. Crawley beat Falkirk on penalties after that one, and Chelsea beat Rangers 6-4 on aggregate. So three of the three massive teams in the semi-finals there, and Crawley. Chelsea were the lucky ones to draw Crawley, and they beat them 5-1 on aggregate, while Manchester United convincingly beat Liverpool in their home leg after losing 1-0 in the away leg. So Chelsea Man U in the final of the Empire League, and it went Man U's way, 2-1, the final score at Wembley. Now, the Brexit Champions League. This one is going to be a bit different because, well, spoiler alert there for the final, but let's go to the quarterfinals. Norwich beat Everton, Bournemouth beat Huddersfield, Man City beat Arsenal, Stoke beat Southend. But in the semi-finals, Norwich beat Stoke, that's not too surprising, but Bournemouth eliminated Manchester City, which is great for me because, you know, different teams winning things. And it gave us a final of Bournemouth versus Norwich. Now you can see the final score there, but what we'll do is we'll let you see the goal, and you can see the goal scorer there. It might surprise you. In fact, let's have a look at the teams here. You can see there's quite a few different players. James Rodriguez, Jefferson Lerma, actually I think he's still there, Bernadeschi, Emerson, and Norwich, look at them, Carrasco, Carvalho, Oscar, Carvajal. So this one in the first half, 26 minutes on the clock. Emerson crosses it into the box. Lerma heads it down. James Rodriguez takes a shot. It's saved, but he gets on the rebound. And James Rodriguez scores his second Brexit Champions League final goal, but this time for his new club, Bournemouth. Obviously, he scored for Manchester United against Newcastle a couple of seasons back. This time, he's won it for Bournemouth, and Bournemouth are the Brexit Champions League winners. They are going to the Club World Cup in December to play teams like Juventus, AC Milan and Bayern Munich. Yeah, didn't quite see that coming at the start of the season. But that's it, really. We're done for this roundup of Cup winners. What we're going to have to do now is, well, on the next edition, we're going to see stuff, because normally there's an international competition between seasons, but there isn't this season. Well, there is, but we don't. I don't care too much about the African Nations Cup and the CONCACAF Gold Cup enough to dedicate an episode to them. So instead, we're going to have a legacy edition. And what we're going to do is have a look at some of the lists of winners since we've done, over the 4 seasons we've done this, of the bigger tournaments, so Brexit Champions League, Empire League, Cup Winners' Cup, other Champions Leagues and the English tournaments, and a couple of Scottish and the Welsh ones. We're going to have a look and see how, like, who's been dominating what, where has the trends been stopped, have the smaller teams started to make a move on those top spots. Well, that's what we're going to do, and we're also going to have a look at the World Cup qualifying draw and who's won the African Nations Cup and CONCACAF Gold Cup. So until then, like, subscribe, and rock on!